is Heather Beal. I'm the treasurer of Families for Safe Schools. Happy Pride Month. And I've never done this before, so please bear with me because I talk really fast and shake if I'm in front of a bunch of people. So first and foremost, let's take a small moment of silence for the recent gun violence victims. Thank you very much. So we're going to have our candidates, Anthony's going to speak first, and then we're going to have our school board candidates, and then finally our candidates for Congress. So first we'll kick off with Anthony Yance.
Hello everybody, hello. Oh, I'm breaking my own toy. Thank you for being here. Although this is not my district, I'm in Palm Bay, 33 is the district. I'm running against Randy Fine. And although this is not my district, I find it extremely important to show support for other areas in Brevard. And so that is why I'm here, showing support to these candidates who are amazing. And I'm happy to do that and show leadership. And that includes traveling all across the county. So that is one of my goals. And I am here to start everything off. And thank you. And if you, although you can't vote for me, if you're not in my district, you can go to my website. I have cards on the table over there, and you can volunteer and you can donate. And most importantly, you can talk about me on social media because that's way cooler. And thank you. I appreciate it.
We didn't figure out which school board member the candidate wanted to go first. So we'll have them go, then a Q&A, and then we'll do another Q&A at the end if anybody comes up with questions while they're talking. Kim is actually out today, so if you're here to hear from her, she's not feeling well. But we'll have Erin Dunne first.
Hey guys, I knew it was a little windy out here. All right. So my name is Erin Dunne, and I am running for school board in District 2. If you're not aware where District 2 is, that includes part of Rockledge, which is where I live, Cocoa, Merritt Island, Cape Canaveral, and Cocoa Beach. So it's like a wide swath of sort of the middle of Brevard County. So I've been a public school educator for 13 years. And when I thought about school board, it was incredibly important to me that the people on our school board are there to represent all of our kids and all of our families. So I decided, let's see, last spring I was at some school board meetings where we were there to represent our LGBTQ students when there were discussions about transgender rights in our schools and things like that. So I went to some school board meetings last spring where there were some protesters and some of our students, and I stood between them with my sign. I think teachers support LGBTQ students, things like that. And over the last couple months, over the last year or so, I just noticed attacks on our teachers and attacks on our students. And I wasn't convinced that I was necessarily the person who needed to step up, but I was watching what was happening in our schools over the last few months. Finally, it came to winter break. And I did some more research on the people running in my district and decided that none of the three of them were in this for the right reasons. None of them were here for all of our kids. They weren't there to respect our teachers, and they weren't there for public education. And so that's why I finally decided in January, February, that it was me who had to step up if we were going to make sure that our schools were there, our public education remained strong in Brevard County for all of our kids. And so let me tell you a couple of reasons why I decided to step up. So, a little more details. So the first thing is, I think it's vitally important that, like I said, all of our students are represented in our schools. I think that includes in our school libraries. I think that all of our students deserve the chance to have books in our school libraries that represent their families, their cultural heritage. And actually, I think that it's vitally important that kids of a certain cultural heritage can find books about other people as well. I think that's actually maybe even more important. Because kids come to our schools with what they know from home, right? They bring their own experiences, and I think that public schools are where we educate them about others. And I think that the empathy that we build is how we, move forward as a community, how we come together as a community. So having books in our libraries that allow our students to do that, I think is vitally important. I think that also includes our school curriculum, that we're teaching accurate history to our students, that we, absolutely. And so that's a huge thing, that all of our kids are represented in all of our families in our schools. The second reason that I stepped up is, like I said, I've been a teacher for 13 years. And so probably most of my best friends in Brevard County are actually teachers. A number of them helping on my campaign and things like that. So I have already, of course, met with a number of friends who are media specialists that I've worked with, a number of friends who teach in multiple schools throughout our county, it's friends who are school social workers and principals and things like that. And so we need to make sure that the teaching profession is respected in Brevard County. That is vitally important. And when we hear about parental rights, I absolutely agree that we have to involve parents in our schools. I'll talk about that in just a second. But when I talk about respecting teachers in our schools right now, there's a number of things. For example, I will do everything I can to increase teacher pay. I've been spending a lot of time looking at the budget. It's very difficult when the state of Florida comes down without enough money for our schools. We have a serious funding issue from the state in regards to public education. But I think that there are many other things we can do as well to support our teachers. For example, our teachers right now, you might be unaware that they're very micromanaged in the classroom. As an example, if there is math curriculum they have to teach, they may have 20 minutes on one subject that they have to teach one specific topic, and they have to move the next day to the next topic. Regardless of whether or not their children mastered something, they have to move on, and then they have to move on again. And so the fact that we're micromanaging our teachers in the classroom does nothing for student achievement. It does nothing to tell our teachers that we trust their expertise, that we trust the degrees that they've earned, and we trust that they want what's best for our kids in the classroom. So that's just one example of something that I think we need to really, really take into consideration when it comes to respecting our teachers in the classroom. One more thing that I'll say is, there has been so much division in our country, and there has been so much division in our schools, or I guess you could say at school board meetings, over the last couple years. And it's kind of like a small group of people are trying to push that maybe parents and schools are disconnected, and it's not, and that it has to be one versus the other. And what I would say was, in 13 years of teaching, I had parents in my classroom every single day. Every single day. I would teach strings at 7:15 in the morning, and at multiple schools that I taught at in Brevard County, from Port St. John down to Viera, I would have parents in my classroom. I taught them how to tune string instruments, so I didn't have to tune 40 of them by myself at 7:15 a.m. with beginning strings. I had so many parent volunteers who helped me run big musical productions. I remember we did a big show around Halloween, and I spoke to a mom and said, do you think we can get just, I don't know, some balloons or something? And we had black lights, and the stage was glowing, and we had spiders coming down from the ceilings and glow sticks, and the kids were in awe. And without that parental involvement, I would have taught the kids the songs, but they wouldn't have had such a great experience. So there are so many ways, from mentorship programs to tutoring in our schools, to local businesses coming in and providing financial support, providing mentors from some large organizations. I think a lot of that mentorship has gone away during COVID, right? Of course, because we haven't had as many people in our schools. But I think that this is the perfect time for us to work to bring it back together, to work to bring parents back into our schools, to work to bring the community back into our schools. And at the end of the day, right, Brevard County is excellence for all students. And I think the all students is what we have to focus on. And I think in order to do that, we all have to come together, from our administrators, to our teachers, to our school board, to our families, to our community partners. And I think that we can do that. I think that is where the direction we need to go in. And that's why I stepped up to run. So thank you guys very much for having me today.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Erin before she runs away from me?
I'm back.
I can run back and forth. It's okay. All right. Maybe they'll have some for you later.
All right. Next we have Misty Belford, District 1.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome and for taking time out of your Sunday to be here today. I'm Misty Belford. I am the current school board representative for District 1. I was originally elected in 2014. I was blessed to be reelected in 2018 and planning on being reelected in 2022. So when I originally ran for school board, it was primarily because I am very invested in our community. I have, a lot of you are probably aware, my husband owns a business right over there where he does boat repair. We own an ice cream shop here. We're property owners here. And I have 2 children. My son just graduated this year, and my daughter is a freshman in high school. And what I realized was schools are critically important to our entire community. It doesn't matter if you have kids in school, but the quality of our schools is critically important to the success of our community as a whole. And if you think back to 2014, you might recall, especially if you're from this area, in 2011, we closed Riverview Elementary. We shifted all those students over to South Lake Elementary, and then in 2012 we closed South Lake Elementary and shifted all of those students again. And I had been very involved at my children's school, was the PTO president there. We actually won National PTO of the Year, and I mention that because I think a lot of people think that I'm not for parent involvement, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I think parents being involved in schools is what really makes students successful. It's what makes life easier on teachers as long as they are appropriately there, right? Any teacher will tell you there's nothing worse than having a volunteer thrown on you that maybe isn't there to help or isn't coming at the right time or isn't helping in the right ways. But I do think that there are tons of ways that parents can get involved in our schools, and I think it's important for their students to see that education is a priority for them, and for them to interact and build those relationships in our schools as well. So fast forward, I've had some roller coaster times since I've been on the school board. Probably the last 3 years have been the craziest, and nothing that I ever imagined I would be experiencing. And so I think a lot of people, in fact, people tell me all the time, I can't believe you're doing this again. Why in the world would you even choose to open yourself up to this again? And the reality is because that commitment that I had in 2014 to our schools and our community has not waned, regardless of all of the noise. And I'll tell you that we've been getting a lot of really interesting survey result data back, from our parent surveys to Alliance for Public Schools came into our community and did community meetings with people and got feedback. And the reality is that the noise that we are hearing in the media about our schools does not align with the reality of the experience of people who are in our schools. Now, when I say that, I don't mean to diminish any concerns about our schools or to suggest that everything is perfect in our schools, because we have a lot of work to do. And I think that's part of the reason why I feel like it's so important that I continue on the school board, because I will tell you, there is a huge uphill curve in learning about the school board. Our budget, for example, when you're elected to the school board, you spend 2 entire days learning how the budget works, because the FEFP is so complicated. The relationships that I've built over the years that allow me to collaborate with community leaders, with organizations in our community to benefit our kids, I think are critical. And we think that the past 3 years have been really challenging, primarily because of all of the COVID stuff, and they have been. And the divisive nature of things has been very challenging, and some of the behaviors that we've experienced have been challenging. But we have real challenges going forward as well. Erin mentioned earlier the state funding education. And we literally are one of the very few organizations where the state tells us what money we're going to receive and how we're going to spend the bulk of those dollars. So when you all pay your property taxes for the county, for example, those dollars go to the county, and the county allocates those dollars how they choose. When you pay your taxes for education, those dollars go to Tallahassee into the general fund, and the legislature determines, and the governor determines, how those dollars will come back to Brevard County. So one of the big challenges that we're facing this year with regard to finance is wage compression. They've raised the minimum teacher salary, which is great. We love to see that that salary is coming up. The unfortunate thing is they haven't provided significant funding for us to raise anyone who is below that minimum teacher salary. So teachers in the district that have been there 10, 12 years might be making $300 more than a teacher that walks into a classroom today. The same thing has happened with our staff. So anyone who is not faculty, we call them staff, whether it's administrators or food service workers, custodians, all of those folks. The state has mandated, despite the voter decision that we would increase minimum wage over several years to $15 per hour, The state has said that we will raise all employees to a minimum of $15 per hour. Once again, they gave us funding to get everyone to $15 per hour, which we very much appreciate. However, they didn't give us funding for anyone who's making over 15. So I literally will have, as of when we finish up bargaining, we'll have supervisors making $15.25 per hour that are supervising people that just walked on the floor the day before making $15 per hour. So we really are going to have some significant financial challenges going forward, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of relationships, understanding the legislative process, and understanding the budget, and all of those things. It's going to be really important. The other thing that you hear a lot about is discipline in the schools. And discipline is a real issue in our schools. I'm not trying to sugarcoat to say it's not an issue, but much of what we're facing is negatively impacting our ability to address that. So I will tell you, and I was just having a conversation before we got started about discipline. Discipline is an issue across the nation in schools. And I don't say that to excuse our discipline issues, but I think it's important to understand the big picture and how that all impacts it. So across the nation, we are seeing significant discipline in schools. And not only from students, but from parents towards school employees as well. There was a recent study done by the American Psychological Association, and the percentage of staff people, teachers, administrators, even SROs, custodians that are reporting that they are being either verbally or physically assaulted in schools is absolutely alarming. The challenge is that how we address that, we can't suspend our way out of bad behavior, right? I think a lot of people want us to just send kids home. But if we've suspended kids 5 times and their behavior isn't changing, it's probably not going to change the 6th time we suspend them, right? So we have to look at Plan B. And if you look into Plan B, everything about Plan B is about building relationships, social emotional education, mental health support. And what we are unfortunately seeing nationwide, but especially in Florida, is an effort to eliminate our flexibility to address those things. So social emotional learning has become a bad word, and I don't understand why. Mental health, we continue to get funding for mental health, but when we talk about how mental health plays into student academic success as well as student behavior, we're told we shouldn't be addressing any of that. We shouldn't be talking to children about the problems that they're having because that's not our role, that's a parent's role. I will tell you, in all the years that I've been involved with education, kids sometimes talk to their parents, but oftentimes they will have a trusted adult at school that they'll talk to, and that's critically important. And much of the legislation that we're seeing is really hampering the comfort level of educators to develop those relationships and have those conversations because there's fear of retaliation. So, sorry, on my soapbox. All of that to say, as we move forward, I think solid leadership that can cross boundaries, break down barriers to all of the things that we're seeing in our schools is going to be really important. And it would be my honor to continue to serve in that capacity. I will say really quickly, I think Heather's going to take questions, but there are some volunteer sign-up sheets at each of the tables. We have moved past the petition process in our elections, and so we now move on to phase 2, and that is all sorts of things: door knocking, sign waving, phone calls, you name it. So there are some volunteer sign-up sheets on each of the tables if you would like to sign up, and I will certainly loop you in when we're doing those things. There are some cards over there. I've got some signs. I've got some t-shirts. So if you want any of those things, let me know before you go. And with that, I will turn it over to Heather.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Belford before we keep going?
Yeah, do you have extra large?
I
Question. So I've been to a few school board meetings, and I hear a lot of a small group of people asking a lot about why you're mismanaging the money in the budget and why you're using this. And I've been there and seen those answers come back from the board of this money's not being used for attorneys. That money was already set aside, things like that. And I know they've been calling for a forensic budget. Will you please tell us what the purpose of a forensic budget would be and is? Forensic audit, yes, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. So a forensic audit is basically looking for foul play among the spending within the district. I will tell you, I don't know of any organization that is audited more than the Brevard County School District. In fact, we have the Auditor General in right now. They come in every 3 years and dig through virtually everything that we do, not only to look at the financial aspect. So right now they're doing an operational, a financial, and a federal funds audit. They come in every 3 years and do that audit. We also have internal auditors, which are not internal to the school district, they're contracted, that do audits throughout the year and on various things. And so they look into finances. They look into, for example, if you've ever been in a school, you've seen fundraisers done and those dollars come into the school, and then what happens with them and how do we track them, and are we recording things in the time that we're supposed to record them. They also look at how we're tracking parts and what our processes are that might be putting us at risk. So a forensic audit is incredibly expensive and would be looking at the things that are already being looked at within our district. We have an enormous amount of oversight. We have to report to the state, even on how we allocate the teacher salary allocation dollars has to be reported to the state. Everything we do is already scrutinized. In addition, I would say that our finance staff, as well as our internal auditors, are always happy to sit down with anyone who has questions. And the group that you, or the individuals that you mentioned, have talked with our internal auditors, and our internal auditors have once again offered, if you have any additional questions, please come and sit down with us. And that has not yet occurred. So, but yes, and we are, all of our audits are completely public record. Everything we do is public record. So you can go on the website and see every audit report that's been provided to the district for decades.
By chance are those sit-downs recorded?
The sit-downs, no. You're on a roll today, Anthony. Either one.
I have a question.
Pardon?
Just have a question.
Me too.
Okay, go ahead.
So I taught computers in the Brevard Public Schools for 2 years, and I moved here from Maryland, where things are a lot different, and you make twice as much money and all that stuff. But anyway, my question is this. I was super surprised to learn that the value-added measure, or whatever it's called, that my score as a teacher would be determined by some random other teacher. I would be assigned her score, like it was my score, because my subject matter, they felt, couldn't be tested. And I wonder, A, if that's still the case, and B, is there any pushback against that? Because I get people think specials teachers aren't teaching a real subject, but in my case, I was teaching a real subject.
So typically what happens, the value-added measure is something that is calculated by the state. And typically what happens is if you are a teacher that is not in a tested subject, you actually get the school average for your VAM. We have in Brevard County, through the way that we do our evaluation process, been able to really kind of minimize impact of VAM with regard to determination of highly effective or effective, so that we can kind of nullify that number to some extent. And that sounds kind of bad, because I think teacher quality is important, right? But at the same time, we know that we have instances where we have teachers that are not getting a score based on their own work. The alternative choice to that is to do more assessments. And I don't think that any of us are really in favor of that. And so what we have done here in Brevard is tried to minimize the impact of that VAM score on the overall evaluation score. I don't see it going away from the state level, though, the VAM issue. Yeah.
I have a question to this statement. My first question is, have you guys considered, with the school board, to educate the public? There seems to be confusion between what a budget is and what invoicing and auditing is. You know, they're two different things, because we heard a lot of the, well, we want to know how many pencils, we want to, you know, that's not what a budget is for, and there seems to be confusion on that.
Yes, and so one of the things that we did this year is we released what's called the Popular Annual Financial Report, and anyone that's interested in the spending of the district, if you just go to brevardschools.org and type in Popular Annual Financial Report, to try to make it more understandable for people. I mean, it's a really complicated issue, and especially if you don't have a finance background, trying to comprehend all of that information is really difficult. So this year we put out the Popular Annual Financial Report to try to break down some of the details, I guess, and explanations of, like, what is this fund, what is that fund. The different line items are kind of defined in that document. And so we keep trying to make it more and more clear. Yeah. You know, there was a recent request for us to give an actual a breakdown of every single expenditure in the district. And I'm not sure that we could fit that in this pavilion printed on paper. You know what I mean? It's just, it's so incredibly complicated. And so we continue to, we do budget presentations and we do...
I mean, a budget is what you are prepared to spend,
Yes.
not what you do. And
Yes, exactly.
The statement I had was I would tell everybody in this room to check out the opponents that are running for school board. There are some really scary people. I had a chance to have a very long conversation with Gene Trent, and he scared me to my core. He's racist, he's sexist, he's bad. And we've got, I'm seeing signs pop up everywhere. We really need to...
Yeah.
Sign for Erin Dunne front yard.
Yeah, and that's that's a really good point. I think we could agree or disagree on, issues, individuals, whatever it is, but what I would say is please get engaged, educate yourself about the people that are running, ask them questions, look at their social media, their personal social media, look who they're associated with, and then choose to get involved in a campaign, because this year is going to be critical. There's a movement nationally to really change the culture of schools, and so I would second that you should look at that.
Started in Brevard.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to piggyback on what he just said. When I was studying political communication in graduate school, and class on polling and political opinion and how people go blah, 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 the number one determinant of who's going to win an election has nothing to do with their campaign platform. It has to do with name recognition.
Yes.
People don't know who their school board candidates are. They don't know anything about you. They see a name they recognize, they vote for it. The second predictor is nicknames. Somebody whose name is J.M., quotation mark, Jim, blah, 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 is going to get the vote before James, blah, blah, blah. So name recognition, we have got to get everybody's name as recognized, signs in the yard, T-shirts, whatever.
Yes.
Name recognition is the number one thing.
Yes, thank you for that. And to your point about some of the candidates, I would say make sure that you take the opportunity to individually reach out and speak to them if you don't know where you stand on an issue, because we had an event recently where I will tell you that and Erin did a great job of calling him out on it, but sometimes the candidates speak to their audience and not to their truth, and I think it's really important to weed through that. So, yes.
Considering we're at a safe school event, and you've been there in the school board, can you tell us what Brevard Public Schools has done over the last 4 years to make the schools safer?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we actually were ahead of the curve on school safety initiatives. Prior to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, we had already started a pretty significant safety initiative. It's been a cornerstone of importance for me, so much so that I actually went through the Guardian training program. So I'm a certified school safety specialist. And I did that. I had no experience with guns whatsoever. In fact, the first day I showed up for training, every time a gun went off, I was jumping. But I did it because I thought it was important to understand the quality of training that was being provided to the people that were going to be in our schools. And so in Brevard County, we've done a lot of different things. We have the RAVE app, which is an immediate notification to law enforcement of things that go on in the school. All of our schools are down to a single point of entry. Unfortunately, as we saw in Texas, if someone, leaves gates open, that kind of makes that single point of entry not very valuable. And so we continue to update people, remind people of the expectations for safety. We have armed personnel. The majority of our schools have law enforcement officers. In fact, in Titusville Police Department, actually I was speaking with our police department before I even got on the school board. Felt like it was really important that we had a school resource officer at each school, and Chief Lau has been phenomenal about always making sure that we do have a licensed SRO at every one of our schools in Titusville. In addition to that, we have some guardians at our schools as well that work in conjunction with the SRO, and those usually they're rotating. We have invested significant money. In fact, we spent $400,000 out of our school safety dollars to have a security organization come in and do a thorough evaluation of our schools and tell us where our weaknesses were so that we could start to address those. And we've utilized our sales surtax to address a lot of those issues. We have have increased the number of cameras throughout our schools, and those cameras feed directly to law enforcement. So in the event that something happens, they can tap directly into our camera feed in response. Our Office of District and School Security is run by the Brevard County Sheriff's Department. And so we literally have, we have a major and a lieutenant and 3 sergeants and 2 analysts that are housed out of our district security office. And our analysts are online analyzing all sorts of things that are taking place in cyberspace. Everything from social media posts to, stuff on the dark web so that we can get a heads up. And then I will tell you one of the things that we've done, which I think is really, really important. The state actually has funded what's called Fortify Florida, and we've opted not to go with Fortify Florida. We have gone with the Speak Out hotline here in Brevard County, and we can do that. The state has authorized us to do that instead of Fortify Florida, but that also gives us the Campus P3 app. So we have 2 canine officers that go around to our schools and speak to our students about the Campus P3 app and let them know that they can anonymously report anything of concern through that app. And they can actually, if it turns out that there is something from whatever their tip is, they actually can get money for having turned in that information, but it has to be verified, and it's all anonymous still. But I'll tell you the greatest thing that has come out of our Campus P3 app, and we have gotten a lot of good information, but I think the most moving thing is the number of lives that we've saved because kids are reporting that their friends are working or are thinking about committing suicide. And we've been able to intervene on many of those situations. So we've done a lot with regard to school safety, and we'll keep doing it. Hi.
As we discussed, I did a substitute at Titusville High School for the last 6 years, which, by the way, I need to say publicly, your son goes to. And I'm glad to hear both comments about this. I think this year is the worst I've ever seen it. But one of the things that I'm sure you know, that unless the teacher authorizes it, this is the worst thing we can do. And it's not being enforced. I know kids, seniors, juniors, row 1 texting row 5. And it's not being enforced. And it's really, 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 the education process. I don't know why it's not being enforced. They can put it in their backpacks and put it under their seats until development.
Yeah, and I think, so that's something that I will definitely go back and have some conversations about. It seems to be teacher by teacher. Like, I literally know there are some classes where my child walks in and has to put, the hang over the door shoe rack that you can...
Yeah, no phones. I mean, unless the teacher says, go online and use your phone, I get that.
Yeah.
But no phone, they're ignoring that.
Yeah. And I will definitely circle back on that. Fred?
As a recently retired teacher, I can tell you why if you want to hear it.
Sure.
They get no support from home for it. You will get raging parents in your face at 3:35, yelling about how dare you take my son's, my daughter's, my child's phone away from them, which we've been told we can't touch, right? But if we try to enforce it, it's impossible at the classroom level. It has to be done administratively.
That's why we're here, to elect school board commissioner people to make that policy and enforce it.
Well, and
they're the leaders. It's no more of this stuff.
let me just also say that the whole discipline issue doesn't start at school, it starts at home.
I get that too.
Okay? And it's indicative to me of how little support a lot of parents feel towards their teachers. I understand that most people who went through K through 12 didn't have the best experience. I get that. I totally do. But then they bring that to their own child in my classroom who, all right, I'll just say it, but they've been a horse's ass, okay? They have been. I get no support for going after them in about 80% of the cases where there's a discipline problem. No support.
No support
Yeah,
from the
so-
administration and the parents, is that what you're saying, Ben?
So administratively, if you call them a lot, they think you're a bad teacher, that you don't have control of your
That's
classroom.
exactly right.
Got it.
Okay? So that it's a real tightrope you gotta walk as a teacher. So no, you don't always get a lot of support administratively.
Got it.
And I would suggest that that depends on administrator too, right? Just like some teachers enforce no phones and some teachers don't enforce, and the inconsistency makes it more difficult to address as well. So, but I will definitely circle back on that. And hey, Bill. Good.
Misty, one thing that I have a question about, and you kind of hit on it when you talked about mental health counseling. As you know, we run an academic camp in the summer, and the experience has been that there's a number of children that need counseling throughout the school year. Last year, there was one young man we had in particular, and I tried to find out that, if there was any kind of counseling available for him, and I was told that through the summer you don't have it. Is there any way that your budget can provide for additional counseling? And I don't know how many you have per school, but it seems like that's really a big thing right now.
Yeah, so what we've done in Brevard Public Schools, we cannot hire enough counselors to serve the mental health needs of our students. And so what we've done is we've contracted with outside organizations. And in a lot of instances, if it's a low-income family, they can get the cost of that subsidized, or it can run through their insurance, or we have ways to provide those resources. Unfortunately, it's been one of our best kept secrets because we've for years now we've been providing these services through schools, and we had a really big backlog initially where it was taking a long time for students to get into counselors. I think we've kind of worked out that kink, but people are not aware that is available. And to make matters worse, if you, or as a caring adult, try to find pediatric mental health support in our community, it is a desert. So one of the things that we're doing is really trying to get the word out there. It showed on our Youth Truth survey that students were not aware of the supports that are available to them. Showed on our parent survey that they are not aware. So one of the things that our team has worked on is putting together a mental health resource pamphlet. And it's I would say probably like 25 pages long with all of the providers that are available, and we're going to be pushing that out so that people are aware. The other thing that we just got our parent survey results, and one of the things that we're going to try to do for next year is, we do these parent surveys, and we had about 25,000 people that responded to the parent survey, really good feedback. But if someone's not aware of something, the likelihood of them going to hunt for it is slim, right? So one of the things that I requested was next year when we do that parent survey and any subsequent surveys with our Youth Truth or any of that, when we ask, are you aware of the mental health supports available in the schools, I've requested that they put a link on that question for them to click on to take them directly to those mental health resources so people can see them. And then we'll also be pushing that out more. We're also in the process of developing a district-wide mentoring program, which that website is going to go live at the beginning of next school year. And basically what it is the district team has done the work to develop a mentoring framework for schools to take some of the lift off of them. And our mentors also are going to be getting educated on those mental health resources that are available, because I think a lot of times, even if the resources are there, if a student goes to an adult that is unaware, maybe they go to a custodian, or maybe they go to a mentor that's come in from the community. If those people are not aware of the resources, then we're not reaching them. And so that's a definite hard push going forward.
Can I piggyback on that question a little
Sure.
bit? And, it feels like there's going to be a challenge within the current environment. Like I remember that note that came home for our kids, we had to sign so that they could get a Band-Aid, and the contradiction, or the how are we able to support the mental health needs, but then when parental rights or whatever are so suffocating for being able to provide that kind of care to those who need it. Because, I have a feeling that maybe some kids who may need some of those services, their parents may be in denial or whatever, or want to ignore it. So
Yeah.
how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, and that's a great question and a challenge that we have. If it's a severe situation, we can bring DCF in if the family is refusing to allow resources to be provided to the student. We can certainly do some work through our guidance counselors and our social workers at the school site without parental authorization to, just talk to them and try to bring the parents in and have those conversations with the parents as well. But one thing, I don't know how many of you have ever had the opportunity to have interaction with youth mental health support. But if you are a parent of a child and you take them for counseling, that counselor doesn't tell you what they talked about with your child. Like that's why the counselor can have the conversation, right? And so I think we have to have more open conversations about that. Not that we're trying to circumvent parental rights or parental power or any of those things. But I do think that we have to be real about what is going to be in the best interest of our students and allow them to open up and share their concerns so that we can meet the needs. And when you have a licensed counselor, they're not going to tell you unless your child is at risk. They're not divulging what the conversation is about. And so I think that has to be a much more open conversation.
We'll get one more.
Yes.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
I'm a very active volunteer at Titusville High School. I was the PTO president for like the last 2 years.
Awesome, thank you.
One thing, I moved here from Georgia, where we had very involved parents, and it made our school district the strongest in the area.
Yes.
So I really appreciate your involvement. That's why I'm so passionate about it here, because I know that number one, as a realtor, number two, as an involved parent, that the school districts are best when everyone's involved.
Yes.
It's basically kind of a free workforce for you guys. So when I first moved here about 4 years ago, we've been trying to think just on the volunteer side of what we can do. One thing that I kind of stepped up and I went kind of above our school. I'm trying to remember her name. I was trying to look it up. I think her name was Sparga, or I know she's above the Gonzalez.
Molly Vega?
Yes. Yeah, so I knew it would be. But I was in communication with her about getting a fingerprinting up here in North Brevard. And I said, really, we don't just need it at our school. We need a North Brevard fingerprinting day. So I was kind of hounding. Then we hit COVID. Like right when she was like, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm like, yay, COVID. And so anyway, out of COVID, we just had our first line. But I can tell you it was so successful. There were still lines of people outside the door that never got fingerprinted because they were only they were open up late, like 8 o'clock, but there was still such a need here in North Brevard for all the school parents. So I would really like to see if there's any way that you can help support that and push it more, maybe like quarterly or at least twice a year, where all the people have a place to go. Any parent that wants to try to get down to, as you know, it's just a competitive for many working parents to get down to Viera and take off from their work. But parents can help, even if they're working parents full-time, can help in so many capacities by, just dropping off, having them drop off waters or whatever.
Right.
So I would love to talk more about that in the future and see if you can support. And the other big thing that I saw in the year that I was disappointed was that there wasn't a dedicated nurse, RN, at every school. And that was a disappointment to me because like a school like Titusville High School, it's so big, with so many kids, and I know that I think they may have maybe share with everybody. I think there's definitely somebody that kind of drops by every so often that's kind of over people now. But I honestly think it would be wonderful because I know the school nurses up in Georgia, they love the positions and they never left, and those kids, it was a very good, important asset to the schools, especially if anything really bad happens or all these serious health conditions. I know kids that are in school have quite a few issues, whether they're broad spectrum, if you will, and I think that really deserves the attention of an RN being on campus.
So to your question about fingerprinting, that's been a big push from the board to try to get out into communities more to do that. And so I think you'll be seeing that more frequently. It took us a while to actually get the equipment to be able to do that on a mobile basis and kind of work out the kinks, but it is definitely a priority of the board to make sure that we are doing those mobile fingerprinting events. And so you will see more of that in the future. To the nurse question, we actually contract with Brevard Health Department to provide our health services in our schools. And we staff the school, the professional level of the individual that's staffed at a school is dependent upon the needs at that school because they can't hire enough RNs to put an RN in every school. And it is in many instances, cost prohibitive for them to be able to do that unless there is a situation at the school which requires an RN to be on campus. So if you have students that have serious health issues, you have, like in some of our special education classes where we have really fragile children, medically fragile children, that school would have an RN and they would prioritize putting an RN in that school. The reality is that we have varying levels of nurses in our schools, so from RN all the way down to health tech. And sometimes we can't even staff all of those positions, even with pulling in health techs and different levels of nurses. So it's just been a real challenge. I mean, even the hospitals are struggling to get nurses right now, so it certainly...
If the economy gets better, and I asked this because I haven't researched in a long time, so I apologize, but I remember when I first was upset about this, I was told that Brevard County was one of the only counties in Florida that didn't provide this. And I was like, so I don't know if that's accurate or not, but from what I was hearing, it was like the other counties had nurses in schools, why didn't Brevard County? So I don't know, again.
Yeah, I would, I'd be happy to look at the data. I don't believe that that is accurate. I think that all schools have some RN, like all districts have some RNs, but I don't think there's a district that has an RN in every school.
Would it be possible to look and see what other, because obviously the financial, that maybe we can look and see how other districts, counties in the state are doing it that may have a better success rate than with it, and see if we can't, not recreate the wheel and maybe piggyback on their ideas.
Right, yeah. It's similar to the challenge that we have with having SROs in schools. Even if I had $50 million sitting in a pot, I would not be able to hire the RNs. They're simply not there. Like my son volunteers at the ER at Parish 3 nights a week, and I can tell you they are horribly short on nurses. And so, yeah. Yeah, so, even if the funds were there, we don't have the people to put into the positions at this point in time, unfortunately. So we try to prioritize those schools where the biggest needs are, the most severe needs. And then we do have a supervisor from the Brevard County Health Department that kind of oversees the nurses and works through issues and makes sure if there's a special situation at a school that everybody's briefed and that sort of thing. You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, thank you so much. Let me know if you need signs, t-shirts, any of that stuff, and thanks for coming out today.
All right, thank you to our school board candidates and current members.